detective I am, I found the sample. This is the sample. The lesson number 1 was the sample lesson they let you look at as you order stuff. So I just kind of went through that, and hopefully, like I said, if we get it, we'll have books hopefully for next week. And like I said, it's called Our God Reigns, and it's again a study of Daniel. If we don't, we'll figure it out. We'll go to Daniel 2 next week and go from there. Just like don't get me wrong. I'm big. I love modern convenience. I always say, I think air conditioner may be one of the top inventions man ever invented. Because I grew up in a house with no air conditioner. We had an attic fan. And I remember we moved over there, and my dad was talking about, it felt really cool. And I never got cool in my house in the summertime. But anyway, I love modern convenience. It's all good, and we take it for granted. And it's just like when the lights, I'm ready to check out yesterday at Dollar General when that storm coming through, the lights flicker. So guess what you gotta wait to do? You gotta wait for the computers to boot up. And I was worried because sometimes they'll do that. And they're like, because they were sitting there talking, we may have to lock the doors if we can't get these computers to boot back up. Same thing at it's the same situation at, we'll drop by the grocery store. But then I lost my entire thought. I was like, oh yeah. But yeah, so anyway, being enough there, able to find, modern convenience is great, but, sometimes it's the simple, I've heard a statement before, it's the things we take for granted when they go out, that's what causes the most chaos. So, anyway. Yeah, okay, I just started. So, but, electricity. Electricity goes out. We take that for granted, don't we? It's frustrating. If you're like me, get in a winter storm and the lights have been off for 2 or 3 days, and you still flip the light switches when you walk into the room and stuff. So, but anyway, we're in Daniel 1, and like I said, hopefully they maybe I'm gonna try again sometime this evening. Maybe get the books ordered, and we'll go from there. So kind of do what I did, read through that, kind of combine what they have, and then we're going at it. So again, I don't have the verses here. So if you got your Bible, probably Daniel chapter 1. It's kind of where we'll be working from, and just a brief history here on the book of Daniel. Again, it's not really history, just some stuff that I found that I thought was interesting. Obviously the author is Daniel. If you go, and of course we know that. But I'm always one of those. When I have people, I like to go to proof. But Daniel 8:1 pretty much states that right there. So if we go to that, you don't have to. I will right here. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at first. So you see him using first person right there. So I kind of, no doubt, leaves no doubt, not that there is any in this room, but like I said, out in the world. It was this day about 6th century BC, during and after the Babylonian exile. And one thing as we go through this, and something I didn't, because like I said, when you hear Daniel, what's the first thing that pops into your mind usually? Lion's Den, yeah. And that's what I'm looking forward to, because really it's just like when we discussed Jonah. I only knew one thing about Jonah. The weather. I didn't realize some of the other stuff, about the other things, and I remember we studied that book. That was really interesting, and I'm hoping to get the same out of this, out of Daniel. So, but according to, and again, like I said, it said that chapters 1 and 8 through 12 of Daniel were written in Hebrew. Chapters 2 through 7 were in Aramaic. So 2 different languages, and one of those, like I said, the Aramaic was I think it was a language familiar with what was being written or whatever during the Babylonian Empire. So I thought that was a neat little fact. Chapter 1 through 6 is a historical narrative. Chapter 7 through 12 is more of the prophecy. So just a few things there. I have biography of Daniel. There should just be some facts about Daniel that, it's that he was born to a noble royal family in Judah. That's why the king, he was summoned by the king. One of the reasons he was summoned by the king, taken captive as a teenager around 605 BC. I want to use that since I'm going to start teaching again this fall. When they start complaining about this, and you're complaining, hey, Daniel was in exile as a teenager when he was your age. So imagine that. They probably get the joke. All those are verses in the Bible. Anyway, of course, we're going to see here he was renamed by Nebuchadnezzar, and as part of they were trying to, I guess what's the term, have reprogrammed there or whatever. He served under Babylonian and Persian kings for over 70 years, and he was known for wisdom, prayer, integrity, and prophecy. And he was referred to by Jesus in Matthew 24 and 15. So that kind of affirms his prophetic importance right there when Jesus mentions it. And I looked that up right there where you can do it right here. So Matthew 24 and 15. Jesus said, Where ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. So with that as well, he is mentioned there. So again, as always, I find there we are, Daniel 1. So let's kind of we'll get into it right here before we get going. What y'all think? Let's see. Kim, you're a graduate of Vina, is that correct? Did you go to Vina your entire life, or is that the only school? Hackleburg only?
Yeah.
Vina only?
Hamilton only.
I assume Jeff was Hackleburg only. Miss Sharon, graduate of where? What high school? I didn't know this about it.
I'm Hamilton High School.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that's what I was thinking. You was Hamilton High School. So did you go to Hamilton your entire life as well?
No.
Oh, so you went to
I went to Byrd Junior High for 9. Well,
But you never had this. It never was like, hey, I was in 9th grade at Carbon Hill, and then I transferred to another high school during that time. So it was all. So you were at the same school. So we never had not me neither. So.
except I lived in Springfield, Illinois in 2nd grade, so I left from a little school, and there was 4 or 5 2nd grade classes. I mean, there was several hundred in those second.
So from down here in good old Alabama up to Illinois. So
it was a huge change.
Yeah.
You walked to school, and
So when you, and again, this kind of gets into what the example they gave us in the book was. So if you don't mind sharing, besides those, did you feel like, now that you look back, were there cultural differences or things that were different up there that we do down here, or vice versa?
Oh, it was cultural shock. I mean, see, y'all know where Bexar, Burke Community, and you got, in Springfield it was a huge
That's the capital. Is that the capital?
Yeah, that's the capital.
Being a history teacher, you ought to be proud of me for remembering that.
Yeah, we lived down just a few blocks from Lincoln's house.
Yeah, neat, yeah.
But the school was huge. As I said, there was 4 or 5 second grades. They had more in 3 or 4 classrooms than we had in, the whole Byrd Junior High, which was 1 through 9. And we had school nurse. We didn't have a school nurse. I mean,
that probably school nurses had that common even in Alabama, probably to the last half of my career. So.
Yeah, and they had assistant principals. We just had a principal, and they had one principal, and there were several, 4 or 5 assistant principals that took care of different, different grades.
So just totally.
It was totally different.
And again, without, you don't have to, without sharing anything if it's traumatic, but the first day you walked into class.
Well, I was scared. I
You should be.
I was a little,
I mean, I'm uneasy.
7-year-old kid that didn't know a soul. And my mother walked me to school every day until I got friends with one of the neighbors.
So,
This was after some child had been kidnapped, Greenspan, something, and it was a small child, and it was made all the news. And so my mother walked me, I don't know how many blocks to school every morning, and every afternoon she came and walked me back. And so, and we had school guard, street crossing guards. Well, we didn't even have a street down there. So all of these school guards, crossing guards, and so yeah, it was cultural shock.
Sure. And I don't know, and again, last thing, and then we'll kind of get into it, but did you feel like as you were in there that you were starting to maybe even consciously or unconsciously, I don't know, start, what's the word I'm trying to say? Adjusting to maybe some things like you felt like you was becoming, of course I don't think Illinois is northern or something, but did you feel like if you were there for a year, you were a part of that rubbed off on some of their culture, like some of the things they did?
When you're in school, you kind of acclimate yourself.
Yeah, that's the word I think. I was searching for that word, acclimate.
You kind of, go along with them. Yeah. And of course, when we come back home, they say, you talk different. Up there, I definitely talk different.
Sure.
So it was, you're back.
So even though you didn't make a conscious choice in some of those things, but you acclimated to the culture up there. Yeah. Some of it's just by, then you get into nature, nurture, and all that. So that's the point right here. Like, as we're going to see, when Daniel went into exile, we're going to see here that Nebuchadnezzar, he's going to try to reprogram some of these captives right here and get them to more, if not acclimate, but more into the Babylonian lifestyle, I guess. So let's kind of take a look here. So we go to it in the first two verses. In the third year of the reign of, I love teaching from the Old Testament all these things. Imagine these guys in kindergarten. I had Scott Kerr, and I was scared I was going to misspell my name. In the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, in the house of his God. Notice a little g right there. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. Again, a little g. So, a few things right here. Where, how do we see where God was in control of this situation?
He gave him into
his hand. He gave him into it. So he's the one. It says right there, when he besieged it, he gave the king, he gave Jehoiakim into his hand. So, I think as we go into that, some things here, but I mean, that'd be a scary time if you were for the Israelites then, wouldn't you think? So I think, as we go through some of the things here, and that's kind of where some of the stuff in the book was like, so we're going to go through trials, and we're going to go through some things that are not pleasant and even downright scary. But I think the one thing that here, God's still in control. And that's where our faith comes in, to where it's a scary situation, but at the end of the day, God's still in control. And that should be a comfort for us. And I think here we're going to see, I think Daniel gives us a great example here of how, when we get in situations, of how we should react. I think something else right here, part of the vessels of the house of God, in other words, allowing the temple articles to be taken into pagan temple. And, you know, and I left y'all the answer right there in one of them, but, you know, that's, why is that, why do you think that was important? I mean, usually during those times when armies conquered, they took everything anyway. Why do you think it's important to mention that? Anyone? Peter? All right, y'all are just getting you ready for when I start teaching again. That's what, no response.
Silence.
Silence. Silence can be powerful. So it's taking vessels of the house of God into to a pagan.
Proves his God's greater than the other one.
That proves that, yeah. So it shows that. Also, kind of a little bit of, you know, are they going to remain faithful or are they going to acclimate to the culture they're in? And, you know, that's kind of a, you know, you think about it, we may not be taking today, but when we go, you know, I was thinking about this, you know, sometimes, you know, in our lives, or, you know, maybe we have to go to places where, you know, we may not be taking actual vessels or temples, but our body's a temple, is it not? So we go there. You know, are we going to fall into the habits of those that are not, or are we going to still, you know, remain, what's the word, faithful? You know, so that was just some of the thoughts I had when I jotted down right there. So, and then right there we see it says, how should we approach trials that come across our lives? And of course, I had the answer, spiritual discipline, right there. I didn't delete it because I make my copy and I delete the answers from y'all's. But I want you to go to Daniel 12. If you can there. If you can't, that's okay. Like I said, I'm flipping over here as quick as my little swipe. And I really like this because I thought this was worth sharing. Daniel 12, chapter 12, verse 5. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters. Oh, I'm sorry, not Daniel, excuse me, Hebrews. I can't even read. Is that a common thing for, you know, you're in one book and go to the other and you accidentally stay in the same book?
Sometimes when you're preaching, you give them the wrong reference and you have to make it fit.
I'm not that skilled.
We're wrong and fix it.
Yeah. That's all I can do. So Hebrews 12, 5 through 11 right here. It says, and ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chastens not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all these partakers, then are ye bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of the spirits and live? For they verify for a few days chasten us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees. So, getting through all that, right, especially at the last part right there, as we go through, as we go through tough times and trials right there, I think this verse, and again, these are just some of the things I thought. It says, it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto which are exercised thereby. So spiritual discipline, staying, it's easy right there. And again, there are some trials that, it's extremely painful that we have to go through. So, when we find yourself there, I think, between that and understanding that God is in control of all the situations and what this verse here, again, we shouldn't lose hope. And, sometimes that's easy to do when we're in that despair, aren't we? But anyway, so spiritual discipline, understanding God's in control, when God allows, as he says, God allows exile. So let's, as we move on right here, as we get to, so we get to verse 3 here, and we're going to go back to Daniel. I almost started reading verse 3 of Hebrews, so I have even more respect than I already had for a preacher's job. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongues of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end therefore they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. Now, those are names right there. I can pronounce those pretty good because I've heard those before. And I'm going to be honest with you, I learned something right there. I did not realize that's where, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's where they got their names from. Just realize that. So, I got something out of today's lesson. I don't know if y'all heard that. We see there, if you had to describe what was Nebuchadnezzar looking for that he wanted from the Israelites that was going to be brought into their service. You don't have to give it specific, but basically if you had to describe, he was looking for the cream of the crop, wasn't he? Best of the best. And so with that, we see him, he brings them in, and he, why change the names? Why would that be important?
Make them fit in better.
Make them fit in better. Fit in where?
In Babylon.
In Babylon. Yeah. So let's start, as I said, reprogramming.
And maybe he couldn't pronounce their other
Yeah. Maybe there was paperwork and he couldn't spell it. I don't know, Daniel to that. I think I'd stick with Daniel, but just read somewhere humor increases learning by 8% or something. That's actually a fact. I've read somewhere that humor. I don't know. But so as we get today, how does our culture attempt to rename or reshape Christians today? That happens, doesn't it?
Lots of things are different in, I guess, Christian society, or how Christians are perceived now as when they were when I was growing up. They now it's not just the Jews that are being attacked, but a lot of Christian values, and they're not, I guess, respected like they used to be, I don't think. Used to, people, even if they weren't Christians, they still respected the Christian values, honesty and doing all the good deeds and things. But a lot of that is just not honored. I don't see it honored like it was when I was growing up. I mean, Christianity's become kind of a disparity to some. And the people that they're extremely vocal, those that are against you.
Yeah, we're seen as judgmental or.
That's the word we
Narrow-minded.
hear more than, you know, we're still the silent majority.
Is there ways we can, without compromising what's right, is there ways that we can help with that? You think?
Yeah, probably be a little bit more vocal in a positive manner.
Some of the things here is like media, peer pressure, you got secular ideologies, you know, and I think, you know, as we see here today, I think one thing though kind of gets into, you know, I think Daniel right here, he's going to be put to the test here, and I think he gives us a good example here of how we might could respond. So as we go through 8 through 16, again, I'm glad we kind of had that longer discussion because this is going to be a really short lesson. But Daniel, picking up chapter 8 through 16, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat. Remember, he was offered meat and wine, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse, liking than the children which are you sort of? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. So, I had to read that a couple of times, but pretty much he's like, hey, you know, it seems to me like the king of the eunuch, the head of the eunuchs, and Daniel, obviously, they got along with each other, I guess. And Daniel's like, hey, that's going to defile me. I don't want to partake that. And then the eunuch's like, man, if you go 3 years without eating and I present you to the king and you look famished, it's going to be my head. So it's kind of what we got going on right here. And so he says, shall make me endanger my head to the king. Then Daniel said to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat, and water to drink. And then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. So, again, from what I could see, pulse, anybody that may have doctorates or anything that could enlighten us on that?
Vegetables.
That's what I was thinking. So basically, you think about it. What was, especially for the
Vegetarian diet.
what's a vegetarian diet? So the meat probably was something that was pork. So that would defile them, or maybe I guess is that when they would have, or maybe they used it as it would have been meat that maybe not been pork. That it was used maybe at temple sacrifices at the pagans, or I can't remember. I know there was there was a big controversy.
That was over in the New Testament, but Paul told them it's not what goes in the man that defiles. That's what Jesus said. Not goes in the man defiles what comes out.
Yeah. You're studying it basically on this pork right here is what. So
More than likely. Now there were other animals
Yeah.
that would have been certain types of fish, bottom feeders, things like
they were
that.
considered unclean and stuff like that. So either way, Daniel's like, no, that's against what and so we see right there, and that kind of answers that first question there. Why did he refuse the food? Obviously, like I said, it was violated dietary laws. It was unclean. Second one right there. What was Daniel's approach right here? Was he belligerent? how would you describe his response?
He was willing to address his concerns by proving that he would be safe, but because he could see for
Yeah.
himself.
Now, let's go back to that. Again, sounds like a respectable conversation between these two men. How do you think that came about? Remember, it says earlier right there that the head of the eunuchs and him got along, that God had blessed them, and so obviously they had developed what? They developed a relationship. And again, talking about two people from different, and that's, to me, that's, I think, it's kind of like as a coach, and again, I'm just using this as an example of relationship. Like this week, I started, I'm going to help with Hackleburg this fall, first 2 days there. I just kind of observed and just started, like I said, and I saw Aaron and Clay, and I known them since the day they was born, but the other kids, I don't know. So I got to start developing a relationship with these guys. And, and I think that's part of it, where it's just a pure, hey, getting to know and things like that. Because if I just walked in that first day, and for example, my big thing is when you do a drill, you can do the drill totally wrong, but everybody can finish the final 3 yards with a burst. So I was doing a drill there, and it's just, I was like, all right, I was doing a drill in there. I was like, no, we're going to burst and finish right there. Everybody can finish. So if the first kid would have done that, my first day there, if I would have just got in there and been a coach and started, chewing him out and stuff, what do you think that would have done as far as, do you think I'm going to get the response I want right there, or maybe, again, that's not how I coach anyway, but what I'm saying is, as I build a relationship, everybody, what comes out, we get to know each other, we start to understand. It's just like I tell, when kids understand, hey, what I'm trying to tell you, it's all in everybody's best interest, they're able to take criticism better, I guess, for lack of it. Does that make sense? So, I think that's one thing here. They had a relationship, and Daniel felt, hey, tell you what, if he does 10 days this, let's just see what happens. And he agreed to it, and he did, and that's, believe it or not, after eating vegetables for 10 days, they looked better and probably felt better. I don't know. That'd be hard for me, because I just had to, of course, I should have impressed you the other night when we had supper, where I just ate potatoes and I didn't even see the bacon sitting there that you cooked for me. So, we had to do it. Well, what did we have?
Squash potatoes.
Something else, right? Oh.
It was all
I made cornbread for the first time, by the way, Friday night. So.
You did, it was very good.
Yeah. I gotta go, we're not gonna finish, that was 10:54. Anyway, so as we get there, you see Daniel's approach right there, he's just like, hey, it was respect, hey. And, I think right there, as we come across and we see, I think, the importance of building a relationship, especially, with non-Christians, still walking up to them, hey, you're going to building where, because when you build a relationship, what does that show? That basically, that you have a concern for that person. And I think when we have that, and you see that, I think when you have ideas, or when you come across and give them concepts that might be contrary, it's more likely because usually, like I said, what would those kids done if I was they're going to flip the switch. They're going to turn me off every time I start. So, let's finish this up right here. And 17 through 21. And as for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now at the end of the days that the kings had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king required of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of the king of Cyrus. So we can see right here that Daniel you know, what was God's role during this time of trials? He was in charge, wasn't he? He allowed him to be in exile. How else did he have it? Even though he's in exile, we see this many times, even though one of his captives, the king of the eunuchs, God gave him a spirit of, hey, of a relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it. And did Daniel compromise? He didn't compromise, did he? And I think that kind of gets back into, why the temple articles were taken, because if we do compromise, what do we communicate about God when we compromise? We're compromising and giving something to God, and we're saying God's not perfect. He's not who He is. So, and I think Daniel, that's a good example. Another good example there. Daniel shows how, especially even, you're talking about 6th century BC, but something that can be applied here in 2025. So, we can see right there again, and I'll kind of skim through these real quick, but some of the pressures Daniel faced in Babylon, of course, to conform to the culture of the Babylonians. We saw that with the food that he was offered. And what was Daniel's greatest strength in facing those challenges? He stayed true to the Lord. And it's hard, today it's hard to resist assimilation today. I can tell you right now, when I'm around, you get around a bunch of coaches and stuff for a while, there might be an off-color joke or something every now and then. Sometimes I have to kind of be very wary of not getting too involved in it. Try not to. And, that can be a lot of things in society. And that's where I think understanding God's sovereignty in all situations should strengthen our resolve when we're in trials. So, but again, that was kind of a quick way through it. But again, like I said, I didn't know that's where they got their names and stuff like that. So old Daniel, showing us the way right there. Anybody got them? Because it's 11 o'clock. Gotta get your own. Yeah, that's right. You don't look at it anyway. Get one of those where it just projects it up there. Good morning. Y'all doing good? All right. Okay. Well, that, like I said, we'll hopefully get some books ordered. Kim, when you order books, what was the turnaround time for the shipping on that? Will they get it cheap within a week? I mean,
It might be a couple of weeks.
might be a couple weeks. Okay.
It usually goes about 7-10 days.
Yeah. Worst case scenario is I'll buy myself. There's a downloadable version of the book, so I can at least go through the lessons. That's kind of my plan. Till they get there. Everybody good? All right.
Well, my
Maybe
daddy,
close to Lincoln's house is what kind of goes, she's kind of into his sort of now, stuff like that.
yeah,
I
always was always like this. And so Abraham Lincoln,
And I can't believe